Hello everyone, and welcome back to this week's Morning Manna. We're going to wrap up our journey through the book of James by recalling what was discussed and showing how it all ties in with wisdom. But before we do that, let's look at the two types of wisdom. First, there is godly wisdom, which is fearing and honoring the Lord. Proverbs 9 verse 10 says that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Then there is worldly wisdom, which is driven by emotions, following your heart rather than following after God. So clearly, worldly wisdom does not equal godly wisdom. Adam and Eve were filled with worldly wisdom the moment that they took a bite from the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. That was the moment that humanity needed a savior. Just like Adam and Eve, Solomon was filled with earthly wisdom when he wrote Ecclesiastes. He was the king, he had everything that he ever wanted, and yet he was still unhappy. He realized that everything under the sun was meaningless, including the earthly wisdom. Solomon says in Ecclesiastes 1 verse 18, "For in much wisdom is much vexation, and he who increases his knowledge increases sorrow." That's the difference between worldly wisdom and godly wisdom. James tells us to ask for more wisdom, where Solomon basically says ignorance is bliss. So let's recap this week. Days 1 and 2 of this week were focused on trials and tribulations. Godly wisdom tells us that the testing of faith develops perseverance, where worldly wisdom would say just to give up. Day 3 was on anger and watching what we say. Godly wisdom tells us to be quick to listen and slow to speak, which would help us to be slow to anger. Since worldly wisdom is driven by emotions, our emotions can cause us to say things that we end up regretting. On Devotional 4 and 5, we talked about faith plus motive. If we followed God's wisdom, we would ask in faith so that God would receive the glory. Seeking worldly wisdom, however, would cause us to love God's blessing more than God himself. That's exactly what happened to King Solomon in the book of Ecclesiastes. He realized that having everything he could ever want was just not enough. To receive wisdom, we just need to ask God for it. Instead of that being a last resort, it should be our first priority. When I ask God for wisdom, I need to have faith that He will give it. Trust in God because He is sovereign and He is good. It has been an honor sharing with you all this week. May God give you wisdom as you go about your day. God bless you all.